Welcome, everyone, to another episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much, Pete. And as folks can see, if they have their video on, we are joined by a mutual friend.
Yes.
Steve, and let's have him introduce himself.
Yes.
He's also legendary.
The also very legendary, very distinguished HR tech advisor, my friend, my mentor, my brother, Mr. Steve Goldberg. Steve, it's taken too long to get you on here, but I'm so happy to have you now.
I'm thrilled to be here. You two are not just experts, but really, really fine people, and I view you both as family. So thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
You want me to get into my intro? Because that could take 3 hours. What do you want me to do?
Well, we always start with a question, and the question we ask every guest is, how did you get into HR, and why on earth have you stayed? And I know some of your legendary background, but I'm dying for you to share it.
I'm told that if we cued music right now, we would be hearing something like, I'm a wanderer.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Steve loves a good origin story, by the way. So he has a great origin story.
Here it comes.
Yeah, I wouldn't totally characterize it as wandering, but when you hear some of the key elements, you'll go, "What the heck?" But so let me just get into it. All right. So undergrad, I was all into psychology. I was president of the Psych Society. I went to Baruch College in New York. And I wanted to stay in psychology, but not become a psychologist. So I said to myself, well, what's in the realm of psychology that's more practical, where you could really work on practical solutions within people's reach as opposed to trying to get into their heads for years on end. And so I said, well, social work, that's what I'm going to do. So I apply for an MSW. I get to University of Buffalo MSW program. And if you know anything about social work, when you go for a master's in social work, you are given the opportunity to serve as an internship. You're not going to be paid, but you're going to be placed somewhere. And that day that they handed out the envelopes with everybody's placement, I just had a premonition. Mine was going to be a little bit different. And so I'm waiting and I'm listening to people, adult center, child care, VA, hospital. I open up mine. It's Attica Correctional.
Oh.
And it was not what I expected, but I'll tell you, I actually, it didn't cause me to then go for a master's in HR. The placement at Attica, where I was dealing with inmates who were eligible for parole within a year in a class setting, something that I came back to years later as a volunteer. And I've done that in a few different states, or maximum security prison states, like Florida and Oregon, for example. But I guess the social work program and having a master's in social work, to be honest, it's not the most high-paying career when you have a master's. I'm sorry to say it, but it's a reality.
Yeah.
And I'll admit I'm not totally focused on money, but I didn't want to have a master's at that time, way back when, and make $25K. So the University of Buffalo also had a master's in business, an MBA, where you can specialize in HR. We're talking, by the way, I don't mind dating myself. It's always good to be able to date oneself. We're talking about the late 70s, right?
Yeah.
So I graduated from SUNY Buffalo with an MBA in HR after getting the social work degree. And I come out, and there was a company called ComShare in New York City, and ComShare happened to be the only purveyor of a time-sharing-based HR solution at the time. It was I was never considered myself, even to this day, highly technical or having programming skills. But they had a fourth generation language called Quester, and you can create from scratch workflows and a system of record for HR and all that stuff. So so that's what I got into, HR systems right out of grad school via ComShare. I was at ComShare 3 years. My client was Gulf and Weston at the time, one of the Fortune 50, and even had a hand, and I did post on this some time back. It's one of my most visited LinkedIn posts. I talked about the call I got from Gulf and Weston at 11 o'clock one night because the chairman, Charlie Bludorn, had died. And why did they call me? Because my first application was succession planning for executives.
Oh, my.
And the chairman had died. So here I am, like 27 years
test.
old, and they're asking me who are the logical successors to the chairman of this Fortune 50 company. And my little tool that I built, my little application, identified 3 people. One of them was Martin Davis, and he became chairman of Gulf and Weston.
Wow.
Kind of an interesting story. And I recently heard Francis Ford Coppola talk about the making of The Godfather and the run-ins he had with Charlie Bludorn, and that kind of triggered the whole thing. All right, so a lot on that. So 3 years at CompShare, and then lo and behold, I get asked to come to a Wall Street firm, a brokerage house at the time called Kidder Peabody, and interview for the job as head of HR systems. I was still in my late 20s, and I reported to the head of HR, Ed Weinmeier. I wound up reporting to him again when he became head of HR at Salomon Brothers, in the heyday of Salomon Brothers, when it was Goldman and Salomon controlling Wall Street. So all in all, I was head of HR systems, reporting to a head of HR at 4 different investment banks. And the 4th one was Swiss Bank Corporation right before they merged with UBS. And my family and I was an expat. My family and I lived in Zurich for almost 4 years. So I didn't answer the question why I got into HR. I'm not sure
why
that
do you
answers
stay?
the
Why do you
question
stay?
how I got into HR. What's that?
I love how you got into HR. Why do you stay? What's kept you here?
Why do I stay? Because this is cliche, but I just think life in general, which includes business, of course, is all about people and shepherding and leveraging and maximizing what they do well, their energy level, their commitment level. Most things that are accomplished, that are significant in business or outside of business, involve people. And so there's no other profession that I can say that about other than HR.
Bravo to that. I learned that in the military, and that's carried with me forever. So appreciate that. What a story.
I'm still back thinking of Steve as the rebound guy, because HR is basically the rebound to social work.
Yeah, recovery. Yeah.
I have, by the way, one other thing. The gentleman who's now deceased, Ed Weinmeier, I reported to him at both Kidder Peabody and at Salomon Brothers. So and this was just a total blessing. It was not by design, but it was serendipity at its best. Ed's philosophy was, Steve, before we invest a penny in HR systems, he wanted me to immerse myself in every HR process operationally.
Yeah.
And it started, Pete, I say this, Pete, because you're, a world-class payroll expert, and it started in payroll. So here I was, a payroll manager for a brokerage house. I knew nothing about payroll.
And that's complex comp and pay right there. Seriously. Well, I have not managed it firsthand, but from my experience, comp and pay on Wall Street is very complicated.
That's right.
So kudos to that. Trial by fire.
You got deferred comp and all, and you got the bonus process and all that stuff. Anyway,
Steve,
so
how important do you think that's been to your foundation of your career? Because I've said this before. I think HR, CHROs should have to spend some time in payroll. I think everyone in HR should spend some time in payroll. They'd be very surprised at what they would learn and how proficient at the business and understanding of their own processes they would be. So just curious for you, how did it help?
It's such a wonderful question, and I've kind of gone full circle in terms of writing about that.
Yeah.
And I would say half of my vendor clients ask me to write answer the question in a blog or an article, why should CHROs focus on payroll and know more about payroll? So I really love the topic. A quick answer is, if you don't get the foundation right, nothing else is reliable and won't be leveraged. And you're going to have people, managers, business area heads, all creating their own spreadsheets. So in the 80s, the brokerage house and Payne Weber was there too. I would say 90% of department heads just maintained their own spreadsheet.
Yeah.
They didn't care one lick
The
about
Wild West
HR
days.
systems until we said we're going to get payroll right. And when payroll is perceived as having the most reliable data, I mean, it's logical. When people don't have a correct paycheck, they let people know about it immediately. So if you think about any source of reliable people data in the organization, it starts with payroll.
100%.
And if you can start with that, not just reliable people data, but proactive support of employee questions and manager questions, and then the analytics that come off of that reliable people data, to me, it's very foundational.
Yeah.
And so
agreed.
in addition to payroll, I ran learning around performance, around success. So I was very lucky that Ed Whitemer had that vision because I wouldn't be, I guess, as well-rounded as I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. No, I love it. What a career. What a career. I love, you know what, Steve, you can go around and tell people that your career started in a prison. Or don't say in prison, in a prison.
Maximum security prison. Maximum security prison.
Yes. How cool. How cool. It's
so, what I didn't get into was the last 15 years, which was a combination of 5 years as an analyst at Ventana and at ISG, and 10, 12 years hanging a shingle and doing my own thing. Pete and I have collaborated. I've collaborated with others. But basically, it's SPG Consulting, and I've had over 60 vendor clients for whom I advise and do some thought leadership content and a lot of talks. And I'm still going strong. I'm in my late 60s, and as long as I can get up and connect the neurons in my head and somebody wants to listen to me, I'm going to keep going.
You're a warrior, Steve. You're a warrior and a distinguished voice. So you're not going anywhere, man. You're not going anywhere.
Steve forever.
Yes.
So Steve, new hashtag.
Yeah. So selfishly, one of the things that I know you're very well known for, and you've really opened my eyes up to it. I was kind of touching on it in some of my research, back in 2020, 2021, but you really put a spotlight on for me and has woken me up a lot from the HR lens, and that is organizational agility. And I know it's something that, everybody wants to be agile. I feel like there's a lot of branding of agile. But I'd love for you to share with our audience, because there's so many, and I'm going to share how to get in touch at the end here. I know you're on LinkedIn and Twitter and other places. So, and there's plenty of writings that you have on this that others could, dig into. But talk to me about, what is org agility? Why does it matter? And why is it so critical now? Why has it become the acumen that you need, right, as a business? What do you think about, kind of that perspective?
Well, as you said, I talk about it a lot. So
yes. You're very passionate.
I could probably give a talk in my sleep.
Yes,
but nobody's asked me to do that yet. So org agility, when one thing I left out, well, I don't know why I left this out inadvertently. The biggest market-facing job, all those corporate jobs, and then I transitioned to market-facing. What was my first market-facing job, where I gave talks to HR audiences? I was head of strategy at PeopleSoft. I don't know why I left that out. It was an accident.
Yes.
So I was a global spokesperson and thought leader or whatever, and at PeopleSoft, in the heyday of PeopleSoft, really, $2 billion in revenue. And my boss, the GM, basically said to me, Steve, you got to be a thought leader. You got to be thinking and saying things that nobody else is thinking about. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And one of my sleepless nights, I asked myself the question, what are 2 or 3 almost guaranteed ways that an organization can ascend the ranks within its industry vertical? And organizational agility came to me back then. And we're talking 20 years ago. And why did it come to me? Because success or lack thereof in business, in my mind, back then and today, is all about being ahead of risks and opportunities, being able to see them coming before they're coming. Whether it be the industry is changing, customer buying behaviors are changing. Think about Blockbuster. Blockbuster was not ahead of what was happening in that industry, which was going to live streaming as opposed to renting and getting charged late fees for videos, right? So Netflix was ahead of the game. They saw it was going to not a live streaming. If you think about, the camera industry and the film industry, Kodak was slow in adopting digital film, right? A lot of supermarkets, actually Walmart was pretty good at seeing the diversification that was needed in their product line, as was Amazon,
Yeah.
et cetera. So there's a lot in the annals of corporate America or other countries. There are winners and losers, and oftentimes it's related to which companies had the foresight to see how they needed to pivot, how they
Yep.
needed to pivot strategically or operationally or technologically. And so to me, that's what org agility is all about. Seeing ahead of you where you need to pivot, how you need to pivot, choosing the best path and executing well.
Yeah.
And then I kind of extended that thought process of, what are the other ways that are fairly reliable for an organization to ascend the ranks? And my other two were being an employer of choice, so you can attract and retain the best talent.
Yep.
And the third is productivity. Why? Because modest uptick in productivity in a large organization translate into millions of value creation. Right. So
Hopefully.
so those are my three. And that's how I got into org agility. And the last thing I'll say is, when I was at PeopleSoft and I was thinking about org agility and how to relate, what HR tech capabilities would be needed. So if you start thinking about it, well, you want to have a handle on, is whatever new direction the organization is going in, do people support it? If you don't have the support of your people, right? So back then there was no sentiment analysis where you could analyze this, but there were surveys and so forth.
It was a water cooler.
Exactly. Water cooler talk. So, it's attitudes, support for the change or the change in direction. Of course, it's the right people with the right jobs and in the right jobs with the right skills, and what has to change. Who needs to be moved, upskilled, reskilled, et cetera. So that's all part of org agility. And I think today in my lifetime, is the most uncertain, unpredictable operating environment internally and externally.
Yeah.
So it's more important than ever. That's my org agility spiel in a nutshell.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think there's, if you're not thinking, infinite, right? You're playing a fixed game. You're going to go, you're going to fail, and agility's got to be part of that. But I think you touched on some of it, but how do you feel that or maybe, I don't know if responsibility is the word, but what is HR's role in helping the company be an agile organization, right? I mean, I know there's change, there's predictive stuff, but what else?
Yeah, well, I'm going to seize on.
And is it all their job, right? Is it all their job?
Yeah.
Is it all HR's job?
No, it's not. Well, first of all, human capital management is not HR's job. Human capital management needs to be owned by the enterprise. HR is typically only 1% of the organization. So every employee, every manager, every business area head has to own human capital management, which I define as managing people for competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the word change. To me, that's the focal point in terms of HR's role in the context of elevating organizational agility. Why? Because change management and org agility are the two sides of the same coin, right? And more specifically, change management, the front end of change management, which is readiness for change. I don't see any other functional business area in the organization that's more equipped to assess readiness for change and to ensure readiness for change. But
I'd say that's a step folks are skipping.
Not only
totally
skipping,
right. And even with technology and AI and now Gen AI, I still think there's so many more use cases that are not being given attention. Even something like ability to execute. With large learning models, if there was a blockbuster today,
that should be predictive.
Between Gen AI and a large learning model, that they should be able to tell me, well, we're going to go into live streaming video and forget the whole video rental thing. But what's the ability to execute that change when you have 5,000 stores, retail stores, and everybody's trained in a different context? So ability to execute super important, and I think would be a game changer if one of the vendors can come up with that. Um, and ability to execute, again, is the same elements: support for the change, skills, right people in the right jobs. But one more thing: what else is going on in the organization? Is there too much that they're trying to digest?
Yep.
Too many changes at the same time?
Yeah. Julie, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a little bit of irony in that, HR should be the best equipped to deal with readiness and change, if it's even a budget priority, right? When the rubber hits the road. But more often than not, we see, OCM or some sort of practice there put in with project management or even IT, because folks are anticipating that that's where the big levers are. And so no contest that we should be the best equipped, but truthfully, more often than not, HR is not the best equipped to deal with change.
No, I'm with
And
you on
they're the
that,
slowest to
Julie.
change themselves.
It is a sad reality in a lot of organizations that they view organizational change management as like any other project or program that they need to manage.
Yeah. Versus the diet.
Yeah, but there's another expression I use, like it's make the invisible visible. That relates to risks as well, and people risks. You're going to lose some people when there's change, because change, it's just the psychology or the neuroscience of change is that people don't like change. So you're going to lose people one way or the other. Who else? What other department in the organization is positioned to be ahead of that, ahead of key employee retention risk, for example? Right. So
yeah. So I'm just curious. Maybe this is kind of like a fluffy question, but how much does the leadership and the culture and the environment affect the ability for companies to be agile? Because I've seen some organizations that are really on top of change and staying very transformative at all times, really staying ready versus getting ready. And then I've seen other companies that are absolutely completely resistant to any sort of outside influence, outside change, whatever. Well, how much does that play a factor? I mean, it feels like it's a big deal. But what do you see?
Yeah, of course. Well, first
do you need a culture of agility? I guess, is that the word?
Well, you're right. It has to be a core component of your competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be a core component of your competitive advantage, that be part of your value system and how you're defined as an organization. You're better at change than your competitors, you're gonna leapfrog them. In my opinion, it happens in almost every industry.
Yeah.
But as far as leadership and their role in it, obviously their level of transparency, if they're perceived as not trying to snow anybody, if they're just telling it like it is. We're going through a change. It's not going to be so easy. And there's going to be some jobs that may become less important. On the other side, there'll be jobs that are becoming more important. But for the less important ones, if you're a star performer, it's our duty to find a place for you that's going to keep you motivated and you can continue to grow your career.
Yeah.
That sort
There's
of
got to be a what's in it for them.
What's in it for them, exactly. That dialogue coming from leaders is critical as opposed to minimizing how people react to change.
Yeah. Julie, you see anybody investing in agility, I guess? I mean, obviously in systems, right? Yeah. Transformation, that's an agile investment, but is there such a thing as an agility investment right now?
I kind of agree. And in a lot of where I've seen success, to what Steve was saying about it being in your DNA, right?
Yeah. Culture.
And whether it's just, originally that was associated with systems. It first became popular as a way of developing systems, right? But the way to develop the systems, agile, was specifically fit for purpose for small, nimble organizations. And you port that to a big, process heavy, project heavy organization. And there's an immediate conflict there that is potentially not resolvable. And I think that happens no matter just with agility in general, right? If it's not in your DNA, then it might not be the right thing for you. Like, think about how you achieve readiness and how you get to preparedness
But do you have a
without
choice?
trying to,
Do you have a
with
choice
other
now?
methods
Do
that
you have a
fit you.
choice to not be agile though now?
No, I
No,
don't
I
think
don't know that
so.
well,
you do.
no.
I don't think so. And one of the reasons why is what you alluded to, the T word, the transformation word.
Yeah.
Right. So most studies show that roughly 2/3 of all organizations at any point in time are going through some sort of transformation. Right.
Yeah.
Always.
And that can include HR or business, broader business or
Yeah.
digital. And here's the thing: the other stat that most of the big research firms are reporting on is the degree to which many of them underperform or fail as
Yeah.
an initiative, as a strategic initiative. Many or most are underperforming or failing, and so there has to be a better way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to kind of highlight some of them in this talk.
Yeah, I really think you're right. There is no choice, but you don't have to be an early adopter or a fast mover if
Yeah.
that's not part of your DNA, right?
Yeah.
It might justifiably be, yeah, we expect this is coming, but we're not going to be the first to move out of Blockbuster video rentals or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, we want to walk the tightrope between those things, and also let our employees and our leaders see, like, get time to get focused in on the fact that this is probably the way things are gonna roll
Yeah.
out.
I think companies have to move about as fast as their industry does, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and some are going to be slower than others because they have the time. But yeah, I think you do have to begin in the speed of innovation now. I think you have to have an agile mindset at least. And you're right. Yeah, it's not for everyone, and it's not. It's a lifestyle. I think, just like transformation is, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you said the other kind of magic phrase, Pete, which what's in it for me,
Yeah.
and it definitely represents transformations, big change initiatives. That it represents an awful lot of opportunity for an organization, for its people
Yeah.
to basically, in a sense, my career from education to professional was not very linear, and nonlinearity is like one of the hallmarks of our lives and
Yeah.
our business lives.
Yeah.
And so, somebody that I created an employee journey framework years ago, 10 stages, and one of the stages was the exploration stage. And if you want to deliver a great employee experience, you should have you should be able to afford employees a platform and a way to explore what else is out there in the
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
If you're not proactively supporting that, they're leaving.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in fact, Dayforce, I read recently, came out with something called the Career Explorer. I think others
Yep.
will do the same.
Yeah.
Really, really important. That's the opportunity side of change and
Yeah.
transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think it's incredible, but if you think about it, building muscle to be agile is a process itself. So, if you're taking folks through the first time that they're transforming HR, and these are HR long lifers, they've always been in it. Of course, they're at a different place in their journey than somebody who's done it 2 or 3 times and jumped around, and just explaining that you learn there's a muscle that you're getting out of going through this activity that has a value
Yeah.
to anyone in the marketplace, whether it's the first time you're transforming or putting in a new system or changing your operating model in HR, or recruiting and hiring different people, or starting a podcast or turning on the video for a podcast, right? I mean, like, it's all muscle that you just got to go, you know what? I'm jumping off the cliff. I'm going to learn something out of it. It's,
Yeah.
Kind of metaphor, Julie. Thank you for that. I wanna segue just slightly to like what's hot in HR tech and what does it relate to org agility, or how does it relate to org agility? Uh, so if we think about talent intelligence or skill science,
Mhm.
wow, that has really ascended in terms of it's a business imperative to have
Yeah.
capabilities like, if you could do this job, then you could probably do this job. Why? Because it's skills adjacencies and equivalencies, right? We still need to evolve in the area of skill science. We need to be able to say, well, we're going to put you in an adjacent job. It's not exactly the same, and it's going to take you 2 weeks to get up to speed. So ramp up time is a good use case. But a lot of these are use cases that we haven't heard about before. We're going to hear about and see more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even something, I'll just give you one more that's like one of my favorites. And if there's a vendor out there that's listening to this that can support this, please let me know because I'm happy to showcase it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here it is. You have a staffing gap or a skills gap. You essentially have 5 ways to address it. Hire a regular employee, get a contractor.
Yeah. Bring your mic up a little bit here, Steve. I think it's rubbing on your collar.
Sorry.
There we go. No worries.
Hire a regular. Here's the 5 ways. Hire a regular employee.
Yeah.
Get a contractor. Train the incumbent. Move somebody, internal transfer, or outsource. You have 5 ways to address a skill or staffing gap. And I believe Gen AI and large learning models in different operating contexts eventually should be able to support that because I don't know any organization that says, well, we looked at all 5 and we know here's the reason why we're going in this direction.
They don't know. Yeah. Not so.
They typically say we're outsourcing because we're going to save money and they don't look at anything else, right?
Yeah. So, but Steve, I mean, I don't, no doubt AI, data, all of that's going to make us more agile. But do you think there's a point where technology can be a bit you're over relying on it, right? I think there still has to be that emotional intelligence, gut instinct that a CEO and a C-suite has to make decisions from. But do you think there's an over reliance danger in all this? Could we get lazy?
I'm not the first one to use the phrase, there's no magic bullets. Clearly, when you deal with the complexity and making the invisible visible, how many things are invisible, even support for the change. You conduct a survey, you can't rely on people telling you the truth about how they feel about the change. So in terms of retention risk, in terms of, do people want to be in the jobs they're in? Do they want to go for 3 months of training to be in the new job? Can you rely on technology for that? No. Technology plays a part, but so do people managers. And people managers are, in my opinion, line managers, people managers. They are really the hub of human capital management.
Yeah.
Because you have a good relationship with the person you report to. They're going to have a pretty good finger on the pulse of where you're at. And,
they're very much facilitating a lot of the engagement in HR-related tasks, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Steve, I wanted to back up for just a second. You were talking about talent intelligence and, and the skills science and how that's evolved. And, we've heard about that for a while. And usually what happens is the vendors lead that, right? People are developing things that are being used. And then it's like, wow, a lot of people have this, or there are opportunities to actually use this. But I would say, I suspect that actual adoption and use by market broadly is still very, very low. And I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts about it. These things are out. We feel like, missing the ball. It's been out there forever. But in effect, it's still early on in its adoption phase. Would you agree with that? Or do you have any kind of gut feel?
I do agree with it. And I'll kind of add some color to it. And it's this, right? I mean, if you think about a skills ontology, right? What skills relate to what skills relate to what jobs, or what skills are related to other skills? I think that's almost, that's like one step above a headcount report. That's inventorying what skills, what are the 5 skills you need for this job? That's not magic. So yes, I think adoption occurs at that level, but not at the level of, we're changing business plans and priorities. What skills are going to become more important or less important? We're not there yet. But I think the technology is out there to get us there quickly. But right now, adoption is like in the inventorying stage of what skills do we have and what jobs do they relate to?
Right. Yeah. No, there is. It all is very young, right? And but so much more data and information at our fingertips. But so, Steve, I always ask this, and anytime we go through some of these sort of learning sessions, as I like to call it, how do you measure this? How do you know if you're agile? Like, how do you know if you're doing it right? Is it you're dodging bullets and pivoting at the right time? Is it, what is it? How do you benchmark yourself on something like this?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I'm working with a vendor in India, and I don't want to preempt. They're not in the U.S. market yet. They will be next year. But one of the tools that they're going to use is more a conceptual and a thought leadership tool, just to bring attention to what you're talking about. They call it the outcomation index. It's a mouthful, but it's basically looking at strategic outcomes and how do you measure progress toward achieving them. And when they engaged me earlier this year, I pointed out that they didn't have org agility in there, so now they do. And so they it's actually called Zing HR is the name of the company. And so there are clearly efforts underway there and elsewhere to figure out what are the incremental markers and KPIs. But I guess it starts with, do we know where the gaps are? We're moving from here to here. What are the new gaps in people, in skills, in attitude? We only have 60% support for the change. That's a gap too.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like level one is identifying the gaps. Level two is understanding, what foot goes in front of the other foot and what are the steps to what's the blueprint.
Yeah.
If you have a blueprint, I'd say that's a big step.
Yeah.
If you have the blueprint for these are the changes we have to make, in terms of how we deploy people, even where we have to be ahead of the market from a compensation. This is Julie's backyard.
Yes.
But
yes.
where do we want to pay above market? Because those jobs and those skills are more important based on the new operating context. Those are all markers that you can measure that you've achieved them.
Yeah. I love it. Julie, you were going to say something?
Well, my mind is usually going when I'm listening to somebody brilliant talk about their, things they know a lot about. And I love outcomations. I think it's a wonderful smudged together word. But I'm thinking beyond measuring, which is what everybody wants to do. Can you take those measures and actually link them back to something that is causing a subpar measure? Like there's causation in there too. And hitting poor metrics or poor measures could be caused by a whole lot of things. So then it makes me think like, how much, if I take this transformation journey, how much should I expect to close that gap, right? Or how much should I expect to improve?
Yeah. I mean, it's not an all-encompassing type of prescriptive answer you're going to get in any way, shape, or form. So there's it's a learning experience. I know that's cliche, but you're going to learn. And maybe you shouldn't try to, swallow the whale, and you should start with smaller fish. And
quick wins.
And you build up those skills. And a lot of it is what you just mentioned, Julie, in terms of causation. Something I wrote about yesterday on LinkedIn was it's a little bit of a tangent, but opt-outs. When candidates are opting out of the process, I met years ago with the head of staffing at Microsoft, and before that, he was head of staffing at Novartis. I remember his name, Abilio Gonzalez. It was a long time ago. I don't know, his name stuck with me. And Abilio, his number one priority for the staffing teams there was to measure opt-outs, predict which candidates, after you spent money to fly them in for interviews, give them assessment tests, and they go to 4, 5, 6 interviews, and then they don't show up for the 7th interview. Boy, that company spent a lot of money on them.
Yeah.
Or they show up, but they don't accept the job offer. So they didn't just track the cost involved, but they looked at what were the potential correlates and causal factors that were causing that. Were the line managers not skilled at engaging a candidate? And maybe the first 4 interviews, they had the right person interviewing them. And the last person that interviewed them was not engaged themselves and on the way out the door mentally, right? So causation is really important. I mean, that's not a transformation, but in that small area, they transform the results in the staffing department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meaningful impact, right? It's awesome. I love it. So
I
Steve,
always
look,
feel like,
go ahead.
every single situation is its own flavor of ice cream, right? It's its own thing. And to try to figure out how you can have the most impact or the greatest impact or, close the most gaps or get to the,
Yeah.
the best objective is really a very personalized journey. And, oftentimes clients, CEOs, CHROs just want to know, well, what did peers do? And, now what do I do? But what you do isn't going to look like what your peers do, right? It
Doesn't have to. Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
have to. It could.
And by
Needs
the
it.
way, a specific strategy that can be a winning strategy is the fail fast strategy, right?
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. It's part of being agile, right? Failing fast.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think today you have to be doing that if you're not already. So love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
Steve, I want to wrap this up if you don't mind. I know I could ask you more questions. We love having you and hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
But I want to
Thank
ask you.
you.
So every year we do a very popular episode. This is our final episode now of 2024 by the time this plays. And we will be doing the next episode after that should be, I believe, our Where to Focus in 2025. It's one of our most famous episodes every year. So if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, where do you feel HR leaders should be focusing, one thing that you feel is going to be really essential in 2025?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for that. It is such an important question, and I think, in a sense, I already answered it because, and both of you amplified it, and it's change readiness and assessing change readiness. There's just too much change for employees to deal with these days unless they have HR guiding as like shepherding the change process, and it starts with assessing readiness for change. And so it's not just skills and having the right people in the right place and the attitudes and support for the change, but you know what? Maybe they tried a change program 2 years ago, and they still have 70% of the people still in the organization, and that failed 2 or 3 years ago. Well, you're already working with a negative bias toward change. So change readiness and all the all of its tentacles and the aspects of it, I think HR has to become really, really competent in assessing change readiness.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's change is happening whether you're embracing it or not. It's coming, right, with digital innovation and AI. I mean, there's just so much so fast. It's unbelievable. So I love it. Steve, where can folks connect with you? I know LinkedIn. Where else would you like? And we'll share the links, of course.
I mean, LinkedIn is probably the best place. I post pretty much every day. I do probably 20 to 30 blogs and articles a year and maybe 10 or 20 talks. And this sounds a little immodest, but just Google search Steve Goldberg, HR Tech. You'll find something. And if you don't find some stuff, I'm going to complain to Google about it. So look,
I've said the same thing to folks.
Julie and Pete, I love you guys. Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. We'll make sure we share the links. Julie, anything to close out 2024? It's the end.
Oh no! Listen, I mean, what an amazing year. There's so much going on, and I just think that we're ending 2024 on a universally positive and optimistic note across the country and the globe. People know that change is coming, as opposed to years ago when it was thrust upon everyone and it was in a very fearful way. And so I feel like there's a better chance than ever to see people embrace the idea of things are going to change, maybe a lot, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. You got to break it before you can put it back together again sometimes.
And
absolutely.
And I would just add to that, it's a great answer, but I would add to it, it makes people, professionals, technical people, any class of worker, more marketable when they can demonstrate that they've been successful in a change situation.
Yeah. And successful doesn't always mean you got to stay, right? Successful can be helping that change. And I know a lot of great leaders who have worked themselves out of their position by successfully helping the organization change. And do not be afraid, right?
Yeah.
Go forward, because that's a
great story. That's a great story.
Very marketable. Yeah.
It is. Well, look, I hopefully our show has been helpful in educating folks on how to navigate this change. That's the whole point. keep you updated with the news, give you access to folks like Steve Goldberg, who I talk to all the time and am just privileged to learn from. And thank you, Steve.
Thank you
and hey,
very
one
much.
quick call to action. I don't know if you guys know this, Julie, Steve, you should check it out. Hopefully our audience will. I don't know, best kept secret, I think, in HR and payroll, UKG has an e-symposium. I think it's the 13th one I heard. I'd never heard of it. I'm excited to be attending. It's on the 15th of January. I'll share a link here. You'll see me do some posts on it. But check that out. They're talking compliance in that. They're going to be doing some leadership development in there. They're going to show you some new innovations. I'd check it out if you have some time. And best of all, 14 recertification credits that you can use towards most all of the major outlets. So your SHRMs, your HRCI, and so on. So yeah,
kudos,
come check it out.
Kudos
check it out.
to my friends
yes.
at UKG.
Yeah,
yes.
cool
Shout
stuff,
out to Team
guys.
UKG. All right, Steve, Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. And Julie, you the same. And folks, everybody out there, we will talk
Thank
to you
so
very,
much.
very
One
soon.
of my New Year's resolutions is to learn how to use this headset.
Oh, you're great, man. You're doing great. I love it.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right, take care, everyone. Bye.